Thanks for tuning in to Real Talk with Reginald D. I'm your host, Reginald D. On today's episode, I had Padma. Padma is a multi-award winning coach and ranked number 4 in the top 10 diverse leaders in the United Kingdom tech, and specializes in helping mid to senior level women overcome self-doubt, reclaim their confidence, and lead with bold authenticity. Welcome to the show, Padma.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Lovely to meet you all.
Likewise. So, Padma, can you tell us a little bit about your childhood and where you grew up?
I had an interesting childhood in India. My dad is a retired army colonel, and my grandfather was a freedom fighter against the colonial rule back then. And as a daughter of an army officer, we kind of move every 2 or 3 years. We move to a different town, different city. And in India, moving means it's like moving across Europe. Every state has its own culture, own language, and you got to learn the language to read, write, and write an exam on that and adapt to that local culture. So I had a fantastic childhood, moving around, adapting, meeting new people, and actually, I think resilient to change. That was the interesting part of childhood. My mom was a homemaker, and she didn't have much privileges as a child herself. So her primary purpose in life was to offer me those opportunities that she didn't have in terms of education, going on stage, speaking up, etc., which meant that she would learn the language first before she taught me. I still admire her for that. Unfortunately, I lost her when I was 12, and that took a deep at that point, I think we are told to get on with it, be strong for your dad, be strong, time will heal. There's not much of concept of therapy or grief counseling at that time. So I got on with it, put up a very strong front, the heart of the party, cheerful, a leader. But over a period of time, I think it took its toll. I now have fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, which they now attribute to childhood trauma. But I always carried that sense of wanting to make my mom proud. And I did. And everything I took up, I had to win. I had to be the best, which was a good thing to do. But over a period of time, it becomes tiresome and exhausting. And it took me, I think, to get to 30s to realize that that was a baggage I was carrying, trying to prove myself. I had to go through that spiritual exploration to come to the fact that my mom is proud of me for just being me. I didn't have to prove anything to anyone, and I had to love myself. So that, in a nutshell, was my childhood to adulthood journey.
So you talked about wanting to be the best at everything. So let's talk about that a little bit. Before all the accolades and awards, who were you at your core, and what ignited your journey into tech and empowerment work?
It was a combination of things. The first was finding I was very busy winning, as I've mentioned to you. It was having to achieve and get promoted every 2 years. And I believe that all that doing good for the community was for people who had time. It was not me. So in our organization, there was a grassroots volunteering wing called Outreach. They used to send regular mails about going out, helping the community, and that would automatically go into a folder which I never addressed. Until I think in 2008, I had my first daughter, and one of the news articles caught my attention. It was about a 5-year-old child who had been sexually assaulted within a mile from where I lived, which is the busiest IT highway in that city, on a construction site. That disturbed me a lot. I just couldn't let go. I went in and started exploring who is supporting her, why did it happen? And I got to know that this was the charity that was supporting her recovery through the medical treatment. It explained the situation, that this is a very common occurrence, not as severe as this, but children were left unattended in construction sites because they were cheap labor, migrant labor that had moved in because of poverty in their own towns. And while the parents worked, the children were left unattended on the construction site, hence left vulnerable to sexual exploitation. All that it required was that there is a shelter provided in the site with a volunteer teacher. I thought that seems doable. That's a very simple solution. I just had to find somebody to do it. So I sent a mail to this outreach group and said, there is this problem. I heard about it. Can you help me? So two youngsters came to my cabin and they asked me, so what would you like to do? That question completely took me off guard. What can I do about a problem of this scale? This is like hundreds of construction sites, thousands of children. What is that I can do? And they said, just tell us what you'd like to do, and you will see that you will get the help. And that's where I realized the power of I. And I started talking about it, creating awareness, taking this into news channels, TV coverage, media coverage. At one point, I was locked up in a school because the local mafia, the construction mafia, didn't want this to be exposed. Eventually, it caught on. And then it became a law that every construction site should have a shelter with a teacher. And we supported setting that up in at least 10 of the construction sites. And that was my first sense of personal power, and that we as individuals have that to make the change. And we as women have come with empathy to do that as well. I could rally that support. I didn't do it alone. I just had to talk about it. I had a large team of volunteers supporting me. And that was my journey into true empowerment, into bringing that into my career as not as a separate, nice to do side of the table, but in everything I did, I found my purpose.
Wow, that's amazing. That is amazing. So you navigated 24 years in tech and coaching across the industries. What was one defining moment that changed everything for you?
It was I think the two moments that changed everything for me. The first was when I moved to the UK. There was after 13 years in India, having worked across America, I had done work across Europe. When I moved here with family, it was a different equation. It was more permanent, but I didn't have any doubts about what I could deliver. But I ended up working with a bully. My boss turned out to be a bully. I had never defined a bully and I had not come across a bully. And I realized he's a bully much later. I'm starting off with the introduction that he's a bully. He's just a boss who was extremely insecure. And from day one, he started undermining me. And believe me, within 3 months of moving here and working with him, I lost my confidence that I'd built over 13 years. I had presented to board of directors. I had worked with leaders of large corporations. But suddenly I was like, am I good enough? Do I know this industry now? Because I'd moved into the banking and financial industry from the communications, media, and technologies industry. There are two options you have when you face a bully. One, you step away because this is affecting your mental health. It is actually taking a toll on your whole self-esteem. Or second, you stand up to the bully. And I respect both options, right? One is not cowardice and bravery versus bravery. Both are options you just have at any moment, and you choose based on your circumstance. I had moved to UK with my family. I didn't have an option of going back to India. So I actually spoke to my boss, who was not the client, and said, I'm going to stand up to this guy and I need you to have my back. They said, yes, go ahead. So actually I went to this person and politely said, can we meet, have a one-on-one in a meeting room? He was a little wary because it was him who always called for the meetings. He's the one who dismissed people, etc. So he walked in and we didn't sit down also. I just said, so what is it about me that troubles you? And that one moment he turned red. He stepped back and he's like, I have no problems. Why do you think I have a problem with you? And I then listed on every instant when he had undermined me. He was rude to me. He got my work reviewed by a graduate, an intern. Somebody with 13 years experience, he would get my job reviewed and he would be rude on meetings. And I said, we both bring different skill sets to the table. And we can do really good with this project by complementing each other. But you need to give me my space and you need to give me my due respect. And he just kept quiet and he said, yes. And I said, is that an agreement? Yes. And that equation completely changed after that. We did 1 year project where it was very successfully delivered. And that was a turning point when I said, I'm not going to take this kind of treatment from anyone. I am in a new market where I am a woman of color. I'm a woman and then I'm a woman of color. and I bring my expertise and I'm ready to face these kind of situations, but it'll be on my terms. So that was a guiding light for me in terms of the next few years. The second moment, which still helps me in all my decisions, it's not a big moment, I would call, but it was for me a learning experience. I had finished that project. I knew there was an opening to do some sales and business development across Europe. So I walked up to my boss. He was a German who used to visit London pretty often. He knew London and the big cities. I don't live in London. I live 2.5 hours away in a coastal town. I spoke to him and I said, I know this role is up for applications. I would like to apply for this role. And he just laughed and he said, how do you think you'll ever get to Europe? You live in this town. You can't even get to airport. And you have a little child. It was in front of like a whole bunch of team members. It was a casual conversation we are having. And I said, I might take a tractor or a boat or whatever to get to that place, but that's my problem. You give me the job, and if I don't deliver, then you can ask me why I didn't get there. But I told it in a lighter note, but he got it. He didn't expect that. And he said, of course, go ahead and apply. What I didn't know was I live 40 minutes away from another city airport. But this is a bias many leaders have. Their intent is to help, but it ends up to be patronizing and layered with bias, that as a woman, she would have different priorities. How will she get to airport? I said, nobody tells me what I can't do. That is for me to decide. You can help me to say how I can do it, but don't tell me I can't. And I have taken that message throughout, including my entrepreneurial journey now, where in the last 8 months, I have heard a lot of people saying how difficult and what I can't do. So I cut it off as noise. And those two examples. One, I don't take anything from a bully. Second, I don't let anyone tell me what I can't do.
That was well put. That was well put. I like the way you maneuver the situations with the bosses.
Looking back at it, I think I put lot of gamble into it. It could have gone either ways, but I think finally I walked off with what was right for me. And that's how I took my final decision as well. And I'm sure we'll come touch upon that further down the podcast, why I left my 24 years of tech career.
Right. So how does your framework go beyond success and instead help women feel fulfilled in their work and the journey in their life?
So everything I spoke till now about my career, I distilled that into 3 distinct phases of empowerment. First, the most common thing a coach provides when you go in and ask for help is, let's define your goal and let's work on a strategy to get there. But what we don't see is there is something before and there is something after. The before piece is what holds us back. We women don't lack vision. We don't lack a goal. We are held back. We are unable to get to a vision because of factors that have influenced our life. And I call this the baggage. The baggage is everything that we have been told, taught over the period of our life, culturally, socially, through family, through society, through our friends. And that is a lot, right? You're told, why are you so ambitious? You should be grateful for what you've got. You need to be focusing on your family. You need to put others before you. You got to prioritize your biological clock. All of this has been taught and ingrained in us. And I call this the baggage. And when you're carrying this baggage, you don't have a clarity of vision because you're looking at your vision with all of this polluting or like a fog in front of you. So the 3 parts of my framework, the first is explore. I spend a lot of time doing self-exploration of what are your self-limiting beliefs. I recently ran a survey and it's still running for about 250 women have responded. These are all successful women in careers talking about what does hold them back. So we look at what holds you back, we unpick that, and then we address those factors. Then we look at what is that vision. And if you want to look at this in a graphical image, it is women carrying a lot of baggage. You bend forward, bend forward, bend forward because of all that baggage we're carrying. So our line of sight is just that, right? In that we have made a vision, we have a goal. But when you drop our baggage, we stand up and we can look at the peak of the mountain and we can have a new vision, we can have a new goal. And that's what we do with the Explore. Now that we have a vision, and then we work on a strategy, which is the empower piece. We look at how do we get there. And underlying this, to get to the new strategy, what you are doing till date is not going to help you get there. You got to change your habits. There are such ingrained habits that we got to reboot. So I do an inner reboot using techniques like small changes, tiny habits to make sure that you're building new habits, which will help you do that journey. And finally, it is about elevation. In this virtual world, there is hardly anyone who's looking for you. No one is coming and saying, I want Padma for this job because I know her. It usually happens based on your brand. What is people's recall factor about you? And as women, we really struggle to talk about ourselves. We rarely tell what we aspire for. We rarely claim our achievements. We rarely talk about how proud we are of how far we have come. And in this virtual world, perception, your brand, makes you. So I help them elevate that brand. And again, from my experience, in the last 10 months, when I quit my job, the most challenging thing was what's my identity? For 24 years, I had an organizational title as my identity. But without an organizational title, what are we? What's my personal identity? And that was an exploratory journey where I have now come to. I'm getting to speak to you because of the brand that I have created. And you thought, yes, Padmasini is right fit for what we are doing. So that is the next piece, which is the elevate. So we start with exploration. We work on empowerment, your vision, goals, strategy, a 90-day plan, and we elevate your brand so that you stand out in a crowd of applications, a crowd of people who want the same goal. So that's my Triple E framework that I work with.
Okay, so Palmer, let me ask you this. In a world that often demands women to shrink or shape, shift to fit in, what does authentic leadership look like to you?
Authentic leadership is bringing your purpose, your values, your ethics, and sticking with it when time gets tough. It doesn't become a choice. And that is, I find, is very hard nowadays because you're constantly under scrutiny and judgment. Where you want to grow fast, do I compromise on my ethics, on values? And I can give you an example. Well, that was the reason I quit after 24 years. I was head of global impact for an organization. I was managing the social mobility and skilling across 40 countries. And there was a moment when there was organizational change, organizational objectives changed, and that did not align with what I believed in. For me, women equality, women empowerment, voice for women, not just a seat at the table, but voice for the women at the table was important. And I didn't see that happening. So I had two choices. One, I could have been quiet, taken what was the role that was going on, and carry on, and I've done pretty well, made enough money and continue to be a leader. Or I could stand up and say, this is not right because it's not what I stand for. And I had to do it because I have two daughters. And what I do, they're watching. And this will be the message they take back, that when things get tough, doing the right thing is hard. So I had to take a call. I stepped away from everything I loved. I loved my job. I love my career. I love my team. And that was me being authentic. I had to step back and see what was right for me, what I'd stood for all this while. And going away from that would mean I would be unhappy. So I think if in simple terms, if you're ever at a junction when you're thinking, is this authentic leadership? You got to put a hand on your heart and say, Am I happy doing this? How would I feel about it 2 years down the line? Will I regret it or will I take pride in it? And both can be painful, but pain fades. Regret builds up like a baggage. So I always choose pain over regret in any decision I make. And that is authentic leadership. To look through the fog, look through the noise, filter it down to what's truly important to you. And for me, people in my team was very important. And always based my decisions on what's right for the team, what's right for the purpose of the organization, rather than for the boss or for this particular person. So I think that is authentic leadership.
Absolutely. So, Papa, let's talk about your powerful triple E framework. You talk about there's 3 E's. How do the 3 E's help women rise unapologetically?
So once you have gone through the triple E journey, which I talked about, you looking at what is your self-limiting beliefs, what is your goal and vision, and you go also elevate your brand. But you know what happens through the journey? Women burn out. Because for women, we're always doing more all the time, especially in the tech industry, which is going through so much of uncertainty now. You have two options. Either you ride the wave of uncertainty or you get engulfed by it. And what's happening is because of the insecurity, the uncertainty, women are doing more and more at the cost of the personal lives or cost of the family, cost of the health. And women don't realize what burnout is. I didn't. I actually learned about mental health in the most hard way when I collapsed at office. And this is way back, 13 years back. I was enjoying my job. So many people think burnout happens when you're unhappy, doing boring stuff, repetitive stuff, long hours. Not necessarily. Burnout happens even when you're enjoying what you're doing, but you're doing more than you should. It is like even more of good can be harmful for you. So I used to love my job. I used to work 14 hours days. I always had to exceed everyone's expectation. I used to dream of Excel sheets and presentations in my sleep. I used to have a notepad next to me where I'd get up and make a note because I'm not sure about you, but many people feel you get the most brilliant ideas when you are trying to sleep. And I was going on sleep deprivation. I was working on shallow breath. I didn't notice it. I didn't know people actually took a deep breath. My breath was, I know it was not good enough, but I didn't realize it. I was running on adrenaline, thriving. And one day I couldn't breathe at office. It was just before a large presentation. I was all charged, smiling, and suddenly I couldn't breathe anymore. I collapsed. I was blue lighted to the hospital. I had a 10-month-old baby. And at that moment, I thought, I will never see her again. And for what? For a job. Tomorrow they'll replace me. That presentation, they're not going to tell the client we'll give up that deal, isn't it? I am dispensable for my organization. I'm dispensable for everyone except my family, for myself. And that burnout is becoming so high among women now. They're having fertility issues. We have a lot of depression. People have cholesterol. They're going in for, so many of my friends are on diabetic tablets just at 40, and this is all stress induced. So what I work on is how do you accomplish these things by keeping an eye on yourself. So what it sits at the heart of the Triple E framework is the person itself, your well-being. So you get seen, you are heard through the elevation process. You're able to accelerate your growth through your empowerment process. You're doing it with speed because you're not carrying the baggage because of your self-exploratory space, which is the explore. But underlining all of this, we're going to do that inner reboot. We are going to work on seeing how you balance and how you enjoy the journey without burnout, and you flourish not just in your professional, but in your personal life as well. So you stop doing more of what you're doing, but do what is absolutely needed for your growth.
Well put. I like that. So You trained through elite programs like Stanford, Harvard, and Windsor Leadership. How has this shaped your coaching style and your personal growth?
My growth through my 24 years, if you go through LinkedIn, you will see that every year I have taken up something on self-development. That is a promise to myself. Invest in learning. And that is become more relevant today than any other time. You got to be learning to be relevant in any industry, be it a barista or you're going to be a CEO. You got to learn. So when I was in the last phase of my leadership in the organization, I wanted to see, as you said, what is authentic leadership in the community? And that was Windsor Leadership Program, which happens in the Windsor Castle. It's a residential program. And unlike all the other training I had attended, this involved members from varied community. I had faith leaders, I had people from charities, I had leaders from the government and the public services, and few from the corporates, and lots of leaders from armed forces. And it was a fantastic learning where I realized when you work within an industry, you're in a bubble within the tech industry. You think this is leadership. But then I'm talking to an armed forces general who has been a prisoner of war, and his take on leadership is very different. So I have imbibed all that experience. And from the Harvard leadership, it's all about global community and sustainable leadership. Because today, whatever you do for your organization, the decisions you make as a leader has to make your organization sustainable. I'm not talking about the sustainability in terms of reducing plastic and reducing carbon. I'm talking about your organization existing in the next 10, 15, organization thriving between the intersection of profit, people, and business. And that came from Harvard. And the most powerful learning for me was the uncertainty experts. And actually, it's on Netflix if anyone wants to just Google it. It's the largest people based experiment, which is based on neuroscience and how we need to increase tolerance to uncertainty. And if you ask me, if there's one skill a leader needs today, is how to navigate uncertainty. How do you make decisions in an uncertain world? And that was my game changer when I started my entrepreneurial journey, because it was a new game for me altogether. After being 24 years in a corporate where there is structure, there are people, there are teams, and you just knew what to do next, I had this blank canvas in front of me and I was frozen in fear. How I wanted this to be a masterpiece. Remember, I wanted to win in everything. That never goes away. And I'm thinking, gosh, if I start a business, whatever I do has to be the best. So I can't go wrong. There's no room for failure. And I didn't do anything. I sat with this blank canvas. Then I went through this uncertainty experts. And it is a study supported by University College London. And end of it, my attitude changed from anxiety to excitement. I realized I don't have one canvas. I have multiple canvases. I could try something on this, enjoy that. I didn't like it, I'd throw it away. I'll try another canvas. And that was liberating. And I want every woman to experience a sense of liberation, knowing that there is choice, there is room to fail, there is room to learn. And you do it in a safe environment when you have a coach. And that's where I think all of my learning comes together. And what I can offer to another woman is this sense of dropping your baggage, navigating your barriers, and feeling that sense of liberation of what you have been told is success, right? Rather, you define your success and enjoy that journey.
Yes, because I'll tell you what, I feel like when you get empowered, most people get empowered when they shift in life. Go from the average being normal to something new and creative. And I think that brings the best out of people.
Yes.
So what's one myth about women in leadership that you wish would retire for good?
You don't have to prove anything different if you are a woman in leadership. You got to only be yourself, be your authentic self, which you talked about. Always keep your compass as your values, your ethics. So this whole idea of women need to fix themselves, go to this tons of training to adapt to a room, you don't need to. You are your best role model. You don't need to replicate anyone because no one has gone through the journey like you have. Where you started is very different from where somebody else started. There is an Indrayanui you can admire, but that is not you. Your journey is different. So this myth of how a woman leader should be is left to you. You define your leadership because what you bring to the table is completely different and extremely valuable. Your life journey is an asset. It is not a liability. And you bring that to the table. Be open and open your vulnerability. Be all ready to learn from people around the table. And that brings the mutual respect. And once you have established yourself that your success factors are dependent purely on you, you don't have that imposter syndrome which people force on you. If you're constantly speaking up at a table and no one hears you, obviously you're going to doubt your own voice. You keep thinking, am I saying it right? Is my idea even worth hearing? And then you slowly stop sharing your ideas. And guess what people tell you? You got imposter syndrome. You need to go in for this really special training to get over it. No, it's not a problem for you to fix. You got to reclaim your voice. You're not broken. Next time somebody doesn't acknowledge what you've said at the table, draw the attention back and say, so what do you think about that? Or if somebody else repeats your idea and they get acknowledged, say, thank you for reaffirming what I just said. And looks like everyone around the table agrees to that as well. So women leaders, you got your own style. You are not broken. You don't need to replicate. You don't need to fix yourself. You're your best self.
Yes, I love that because it kind of went into the question I was going to ask next, which is perfect. You know, what you're saying, Palmer, is that owning your own voice is the most powerful thing you can do. You know, and I think that's one of the things that not only women, but people, period, that's vulnerable, and that's what they struggle with, is owning their own voice. But once you own your own voice, then you know basically what you want and what you're trying to accomplish in life, and your belief goes up and what you can do. So I think that's one of the most powerful things in owning your own voice. And you demonstrated that through situation with the previous bosses and stuff like that.
Absolutely, because you get tired of being unheard, right? People feel we have had a favor by getting you, you've broken the glass ceiling, you've entered the room, you got a seat at the table, and that's it. What about my ideas? What about my voice? There have been times when you're invited into a room just to add diversity. I'm sure many listeners will be able to relate to it. Last minute before a meeting, can you join the meeting? And you're wondering, initially I used to feel very thrilled about it until I realized why that I was being invited because it's a room full of men and they wanted the client to see that there was some diversity in the room. And instead of taking it as an offense, I took it as an opportunity. Now that you invited me into the room at the table, I'm going to speak. If you thought I'm going to sit back there and be a good, pretty picture, sorry, I will share my ideas. And I would encourage all listeners to do that. When you get invited to a room, don't get offended about why you got invited. Is it to add diversity? Make sure you get your voice heard. Make sure you're seen. Make that opportunity yours, right? And that will open up so many doors for yourself. Nobody else is going to hold the door open. That period is gone, right? And now we've got to make our own tables. We need to get to our own rooms. And when you're there, we're going to make our voices heard and we're going to be seen as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well put. So, Palmer, what's next for you? What are you building, dreaming, or preparing to birth into the world?
I want each woman to have her circle of influence. And instead of talking about this is my comfort zone, I want to start talking about circles of influence. and how much can we broaden the circle of influence. So I have launched this program called Quantum Ascent, which looks at accelerating women careers through using this triple E framework. And they get engaged into this her circle of influence, which will bring together women leaders across industries, and you get to engage with them, and it will be a journey. It's not like you went through a program, you have done the program, go off into the big world. And I want her circle of influence to become bigger and bigger, so that it's not anymore a comfort zone, but it becomes a circle where we have a voice. And I do this in two ways. Either you join a cohort of small cohorts of 5, where we work through this over 12 weeks, and you get inducted into the Her Circle of Influence. We would do virtual meets. We'll bring in influential leaders to talk to you through that. And you can also do one-on-one, especially if you have a particular vision and you want to really accelerate the growth. And the time is now. Tech industry is booming. And this works for any industry. I created my niche for women in tech because actually I can give you a blueprint of what to do next. But this entire breaking your self-limiting beliefs, creating your new avatar, rebooting your habits works for all women in any careers. So I invite women to join Her Circle of Influence. I'm sure you'll have a link at the end of this. And own your transformation. I have had women who come speak to me and they're saying, gosh, I'm not sure I have money to pay for this, or I don't want to invest now. And I say, simple return on investment, right? If you don't do this, what are you going to do for the next year or two? If your salary is £4,000 a month and you're happy to go on for the next 2 years, but if you invest in your growth, your salary is going to increase. You're going to be in a newer role. You're going to be thriving. And that is your return on investment. You can put a dollar value to both. You never think about return on investment when you buy the Louis Vuitton handbag or you go on a holiday to Spain. Do you? You say, oh, it's for my mental health. It's to create memories with my children. You are going to be creating that financial liberation for yourself and your children. You're going to be a happier person. Your children and your family are going to thrive in that. So first and foremost, women start believing you deserve it, right? Investing in yourself is your fundamental right. Please do. It doesn't have to be me, but sit back and see what are you doing to invest in your well-being, in your career growth, which is lasting and transformational. It's not going in for a Prince 2 certification. I've done that too. I've done a Prince 2, I've done a PMP, I've done a technology certification. All that is learning, skill building. What is transformational? Ask yourself that question. And I would love to have you join the Her Inner Circle.
So lastly, let me ask you this, Padma. Tell the listeners how they can follow you on social media or where they can sign up for your Triple E Framework program.
It's all in one place. It's www.transformwithpadma.com. I'm sure we will share the link when the podcast goes live. There is an application process for Her Circle of Influence program, because it matters a lot where you are in the journey and how driven you are. So it will be through an application and interview process. But if you want a one-on-one, there is a 30-minute free discovery call you can book on the site, and there'll be some dedicated slots for listeners of this particular podcast as well. And you can follow me on LinkedIn with my full name, Padmasini Dayananda, and on Instagram at Transform with Padma.
There you have it. Padma, thank you so much. This has been really great. You are a powerful individual. Let me tell you that.
Thank you so much, Reginald. It was a pleasure. You made me think a lot along the way. It was very introspective for me too, in terms of what were the pivotal moments in life. One message which I didn't give the listeners was, I've been a woman in tech. I've not written a single line of code till date. So there is a lot of women who believe technology is all geeky. No. And all my recognitions, I've got 4 or 5 awards you'll see on LinkedIn, and all those awards I received in the last 5 years of my career when I aligned my purpose with technology, and that was empowering the community, building social mobility, empowering women and children. And until then, I never knew how to align purpose with your work, right? So that is something else that you need to see. What drives you? And the minute you hit that sweet spot, recognition, acknowledgement just comes through the door. So I'm extremely grateful for my journey, having found my purpose. And I'm on my second purpose now to empower more women to experience what I had and not go through the experience of my early days of, breaking down, building up. Rather, you find that pathway which is smooth and learn from somebody who has done it before.
Right, absolutely. Because, I think that's when you become powerful, when you start walking in your purpose.
Yes, absolutely. And then it doesn't feel like a work or it doesn't feel like a job. You wake up every day excited.
Yes, yes. So, Paula, thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming on the show. And you really have blessed us. I know I can speak for everybody that's going to be listening. So,
Thank you, Reginald. Thank you for having me. It's such an honor and privilege. And I look forward to being in touch.
absolutely. Thank you for tuning in with Real Talk with Reginald D. If you enjoyed Real Talk with Reginald D, please rate and review on Apple Podcasts. See you next time.